Well, 300,000 deportations a year. He put child asylum seekers in jail-like conditions, and he was also called the deporter-in-chief by Latino activist groups.
We're not talking about President Trump. We're actually talking about President Barack Obama. However, both presidents had something in common. Tom Homan, a cop, Border Patrol agent, and the man tasked to create the agency we now know as ICE. He writes in his memoir why illegal immigration should not be a partisan issue. He also supports the family separation policy, something he says is not about punishment, but about consequences. So while the country braces for the sweeping changes for immigrants in this country, Tom Homan says he's just getting started. Border czar Tom Homan joining us now. Good to see you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the raids that we've been reporting on. The initial phase, all about going in for those criminals, the violent criminals. Now I'm reading about car washes, going after certain businesses, arrests being made. If you're an illegal immigrant, you're out of there. So tell us exactly how many of these arrests actually involve people with criminal records other than illegal entry.
Look, I'm looking at the numbers this morning. We're about 14,000 arrests, and about 76% of them are criminals. That's the target of the operation, right? But where the collateral arrests happen when we're looking for the bad guy, and we find others with them. And we have told ICE officers they're going to enforce the law. Unlike the last administration, we're not telling ICE agents, ignore the oath you took, ignore the immigration law. Your immigration officers enforce those laws. And here's a problem. I would love to arrest a bad guy in a city or county jail, but in sanctuary cities, we don't have access. So they're going to release a public safety threat back into the community, which I think is foolish. Puts the community at risk, puts our officers at risk, and puts the alien at risk, because anything can happen on street arrest. So if sanctuary cities want to force me in the communities to find a bad guy, that's what we'll do. And when we find a bad guy, many times we're with others. If they're in the country legally, they're coming too.
Let me ask you about the numbers. It's been reported that you've got a goal of 1,500 arrests per day. Are you hitting that? Is there pressure to reach that goal, to get the numbers up?
I don't have a quota. I don't have a goal. I want to arrest as many as we can arrest.
So there's no word from the White House, we need more numbers?
I have sent no quota out there, but I've told ICE, I have asked the question this morning, are you happy with the number of ICE arrests? No, I'm not. We need to do more. We got over 700,000 illegal aliens in this country with a criminal conviction. So 500 a day, no, it's not good enough. We need to find these people and take them off the street.
You talk about taking down the violent criminals, the gang members, but then the illegal immigrants at places like the car washes and other businesses. What's your message to businesses if they have these folks working for them right now?
Well, I think I said from day one, the president's been clear, we're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats. But if you're in the country legally, you're not off the table, but you're not going to be a priority. But I'm sure at the car wash, I'm not familiar with that operation, but I'm sure they're looking for a criminal, and they didn't find, they found others. But worksite enforcement's coming back. And why? Because number one, a lot of the employers will employ illegal alien. No one hires an illegal alien out of the goodness of their heart. They hire them because they work them hard to pay them less and undercut the competition as U.S. citizen employees. But most importantly, where do we find most victims of trafficking? Work sites. They have to pay the cartels off. They force them in labor situations, overwork them, abuse them. So many victims of trafficking are found at work sites. So that's another reason why we're doing worksite enforcement operations.
So during the campaign, President Trump talked about going after hardened criminals, right? The worst of the worst. Is that really who you're finding right now? The Washington Post, we were just talking, has a story about a man who's been in the country 24 years. He's got 4 children here. He works at a chicken processing plant, which, you know, sometimes get hard up for labor. And he had one conviction of driving without a license. And he's now being deported. Is that really what you want to do?
2 things. The priority right now is public safety threats and national security threats. And everybody we go to arrest, when we arrest a public safety threat, we know exactly who we're looking for, more or less where we're likely to find them, and other information. We have his criminal history, we have his immigration history. These are planned enforcement operations. It's not a sweep. We're not going through the neighborhood looking for people different than us. These are well-planned, investigated leads. Then we go out and look for the person we're looking for. But that person you just mentioned, is in the country illegally?
Yeah.
He shouldn't be here.
He's got 4 kids. He's working.
If we want to send a message to the whole world, it's okay to enter the country legally. It's a crime, but don't worry about it. Hide out long enough and have a U.S. citizen child, you're immune. If that's the message we send to the whole world, they're going to keep entering this country illegally. More aliens would die making that journey. You'll keep overwhelming the Border Patrol. When the Border Patrol gets overwhelmed, that's when the fentanyl comes across the killed 250,000 Americans. That's when sex trafficking goes up 600%. And that's when the numbers of non-expected terrorists cross the border when the Border Patrol gets overwhelmed. If you're in this country illegally, you got a problem. It's not okay to enter this country illegally. It is a crime.
Fair enough. So you're not just going after hardened criminals and the worst of the worst.
Well, absolutely. That is our priority.
Not just.
That is our priority, but that doesn't mean everybody else is off the table. If we run into somebody's not a priority, we will enforce the immigration law. Name another federal agency or another law enforcement agency that we tell them don't enforce the law. It's just ICE. We're going to enforce the law. We're going to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and signed by the President. If Congress is going to enact laws that they don't want to enforce, then I think better things for them to be doing. Look, people need to understand, illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. People say, well, coming here for a better life. I get that. But when you cause a crisis as big as the Biden administration did that overwhelms the Border Patrol, where 70% of agents are pulled off the line, that's when all the bad stuff happened. I've been doing this for 34 years. People don't understand what happens to these people. There's been studies done that 31% of women that make that journey through the cartels get sexually assaulted. They get raped. Not once, but numerous times. Children die in that border every day. While you and I are talking right now, women are being raped by the cartels as part of the requirement to cross this border. A child will die on the border today. And we're simply, a secure border saves lives, and that's what we're doing.
Tom, let me ask you about that. Actually, two things. I want to ask you about the cartels, and I do want to ask you about the trafficking. In your memoir, and I took note of this, you describe one of the most devastating moments in your career. You say in your book that you saw the back of a truck filled with dead bodies of those being trafficked. Are you worried at all that this mission could actually lead to the deportation of trafficking victims or even cause those who are being exploited to not report it?
No. I mean, I think we made it clear, if you're a victim of trafficking, there's actually benefits to be given to you. As I just said, Worksite enforcement operators, one of the main reasons we're doing it, to find victims of trafficking, because they need a lot of help from the U.S. government. So no, this is about prioritizing the worst of the worst. This is about arresting public safety, trust, and national security. However, we got 1.4 million illegal aliens in this country who had due process at great taxpayer expense. They've been ordered removed by a federal judge. We have to, and if those orders don't mean anything, if we go through this whole process, okay, you want to claim asylum? You got that right. You want to see a judge? You got that right. We'll make that happen. But at the end of that due process, if a federal judge says you must leave, if we don't make them leave and execute the orders, then what the hell are we doing? Just shut down the immigration court. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Take the Border Patrol off the border because there's no consequences. We have to enforce the law. That is what's required.
So let me ask you about the cartels. They've made a clear warning to you and to the United States that, we're going to escalate our violence. So now we're seeing not only Mexican troops after this deal that Trump made with Mexico's president, and also U.S. troops headed to the border. How are you going to utilize the military? We know what the military can and can't do domestically, but in a scenario like this, how do you plan on using the military? Could they get involved in the violence if the cartels strike?
Yes. And we expect them to. But the Mexican military, President Trump's able to get Mexico to put military on their northern border. That will certainly help. I think the cartels would be foolish to take on the military, but we know they've taken on the Mexican military before. But now we have the United States military on the border. We got the men and women of the Border Patrol. Do I expect violence to escalate? Absolutely, because the cartels are making record amounts of money. They're making record amounts of money in alien smuggling and trafficking of women and children and drugs. However, as we secure the border, which we've gone long ways to securing the border, crossings are down like 76%. We're taking money out of their pocket. They're not going away quietly, and that's why President Trump designated them terrorist organizations. I would send a warning to them. You heard a Border Patrol agent, you heard a soldier. The wrath of President Trump's going to come down.
Does that mean the military, our troops, U.S. military at the border with weapons, using weapons if need be?
They need to protect themselves. But the cartels, again, let me give the cartels a warning. If you harm a Border Patrol agent or a soldier, the whole world's going to come down to you. President Trump is a strong president. He is strong enough, and he has the ability to wipe them off the face of the earth. Now, that's the reason they were called terrorist organizations, designated terrorist organizations, because they've killed more Americans with their fentanyl and their drugs than any terrorist organization in the world. They are now designated terrorists. Do not harm our troops, or President Trump will bring hell rain down, and he has the ability to wipe them off the face of the earth. They can claim they're a pretty tough organization, the cartels, and they are, but they're not stronger than the power of President Trump.
Tom, let me ask you, you've been doing this since 1984 in law enforcement on the border. Over that period of time, we've seen this dramatic shift in the attitude of Americans about immigration. Polls show, when President Reagan was president, we had a very welcoming attitude about immigrants. Polls showed most Americans wanted more immigrants. Now, we've seen this very dramatic shift. What do you think of that, and what do you think caused it?
I think the American people have been educated, especially the last 4 years, when they saw images of 11,000 people enter this country and getting released. I mean, the federal law is clear. If you come to our borders without proper documentation, entry documents, the law says you shall be detained. Shall. Not maybe, not think about it. But what American people have seen the last 4 years, you cross the country illegally, you get released within 24 hours. You get a free plane ticket to the city of your choice. You get put in a free hotel room. You get 3 square meals a day. You get free medical attention. And in about 90, 120 days, we're going to give you work authorization, which is the real reason they came here. They're not coming here escaping fear and persecution. When you send that message to the whole world, they're going to come to the greatest nation on earth. I think people are realizing, so when you overwhelm the border patrol, and that's the message I keep pushing, it's not just innocent illegal immigration. When you overwhelm the border patrol and take them out of their national security job because you're making sandwiches, changing diapers, making airport runs, doing all this humanitarian stuff which they need to do, that's when the fentanyl came across and killed 250,000 Americans. That's when sex trafficking happens. When they create the gaps in the cartels knows this. So cartel knows, okay, the border patrol is overwhelmed. Now let's send a group of 100 family units to this area, so with the 30% left on the border, we'll seize that opportunity. Now we create gaps. Now we can run the gang members and those carrying fentanyl and those sex and trafficking women. They got a wide open area now. This is the unsecure overwhelming of the border has created all these other bad things to happen. And I think Americans are being educated at that. They understand it isn't just illegal immigration anymore. There's a whole ugly underbelly. Women, I'll say it again, women get sexually assaulted. While we're talking right now, they're being sexually assaulted. Secure border saves lives. Let me add this. When President Trump had illegal immigration down 90%, when 90% less people were coming, how many women weren't being raped? How many children didn't die crossing the border? How many Americans didn't die from fentanyl overdoses because the border was locked down? How many no-inspected terrorists didn't make in the country? How many women and children weren't sex trafficked? Secure border saves lives.
You clearly, I mean, you make it very clear that you are all about taking down evil, getting rid of evil, and kids getting trafficked. Move you. You've seen it firsthand. But, at the same time, you're talking about deporting families back to dangerous countries. How do you square that?
Deporting back to dangerous country. What country is dangerous?
Well, it's all the countries that they're fleeing from. Venezuela.
There's a difference between fleeing violence and fleeing persecution.
Haiti, Venezuela, Haiti, which can't even it's run by gangs. Afghanistan. I mean, the countries that are dangerous. It's why they come to this country.
Let's talk. So they come to the border and make an asylum claim. People need to understand, what is asylum? Asylum is you're escaping fear and persecution from your home government because of race, religion, political affiliation, or participation in a specific social group.
We're seeing that.
So when you come to the border and make a fraudulent asylum claim, because I've never seen victims of persecution carrying the flags of their home country to the border, which we've seen. We've seen during the Biden administration they're wearing a Biden T-shirt because President Biden opened the border up. While we're dealing with millions of people making a fraudulent asylum claim because they're really not escaping fear and persecution from their home government because of race, religion, political affiliation. The ones that are, that's the problem. When you get millions of people making a fraudulent claim, those in the world that really do need our help, because they really are escaping fear and persecution.
So how do you help them?
They're sitting in the back seat.
How do you help them?
Because they're overwhelmed the system.
How can you get asylum then? Let's just go by the book here, by what you just outlined. How can someone get asylum?
What you don't do to claim asylum is enter the country illegally. You go to the port of entry, make an asylum claim. And I read the media outlets, well, that's what the CBP One app. CBP One app was
they shut down the
law.
app.
And they should have. It was abuse. If you look at the system, even they admit about 90% of the applicants weren't properly vetted. The asylum claim has to be done by case-by-case basis based on the merits of the specific case. None of that was done. When the president stands at the White House podium and says, I'm bringing 30,000 a month in from Haiti, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Well, for CHNV, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, Venezuela.
Okay.
When he said, I'm bringing 30,000 nothing, where did that number come from? Where's the case-by-case analysis? Where's the specific? No, they've abused the asylum process. And if you look at what's happened, a lot of fraud occurred. People didn't really qualify for asylum. But while we're busy dealing with this asylum fraud, there are people that really do have the need to be protected, and they're sitting in the back seat because they've overwhelmed the system.
Can I ask about the temporary protected status? The Venezuelans will lose that and now be deported. I was in Springfield, Ohio, a couple of times during the course of the campaign, in that Haitian community where President Trump said they were eating cats and dogs, and there was no evidence of that. They have settled in that community, and it has accepted them. They're performing important tasks. That community is growing. It was flat on its back. Are they the next ones? Will everybody who had temporary protective status lose it?
Well, if the Secretary of Homeland Security makes the decision to end TPS, then yeah, they'll have to be removed.
And how do you...
But the TPS, people's temporary protective status, it's never temporary.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the last time a TPS was canceled. But when the condition of the country changes, then that TPS is taken away.
You think that's going to happen for the Haitians and the others who are here under that?
If they lose TPS, then they no longer have the authority to be here. They absolutely.
Well, how
need to
about the Dreamers?
Dreamers is something the White House and President Trump are working on. But let's remember, his first administration, he had a plan for the Dreamers. What happened? Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer didn't accept it. Why? Because there was money for the border wall. So President Trump understands the Dreamer situation, and he'll be coming up with some policies in the near future to address the Dreamers. But he tried once, and he was shut down.
One more question. What would you say to some of these families, whether this man who's been here 24 years, some of the Haitians I met, contributing, they thought, to a country that they now love, and you're going to pull them out? I mean, it's an emotional question. Some of their neighbors will be emotional. I'm not advocating for them, but I just wonder about your personal reaction to the human side of this, to the pain.
Immigration enforcement is emotional. It's and I get it. It's always been emotional, always been controversial. But we're a nation of laws. If we want to send a message, which I think you're asking, enter the country legally, it's a crime. Show up in court, don't show up in court, get ordered removal. But if you hide out long enough, get yourself a job, have some U.S. citizen kids, now you're immune. You're immune from our laws. If that's the message we want to send the rest of the world, you're never going to fix this issue. Coming to this country illegally is a crime. If I was in Switzerland illegally, I wouldn't feel comfortable, and they shouldn't feel comfortable. They're in a country illegally. Many have been ordered removed by a federal judge. That's their due process. They simply ignored the judge's order. It's not okay. ICE is enforcing laws enacted by Congress and signed by a president. There's a reason we do this. It's a matter of national security. You can't have strong national security if you don't have border security. So there needs to be consequences for entering our country illegally. We have millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigations, doing everything they can to come to the greatest country on earth the right way. They're all sitting in the back seat. While millions of people are crossing the country, crossing the border illegally, and being taken care of by the Biden administration. No, we're going to force the law. We're going to set the system straight.
Tom Homan, we appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back.
You got it.